Drop a like if you agree that cliffhangers in video games absolutely suck. Video games can be an amazing source of storytelling thanks to much more engagement when it comes to the nature of the games as opposed to movies and books. But this means that when a story ends poorly, it leaves much more of an impact since you were so dedicated and involved with it. What is up, everybody? Chaos here. Today, we're going to be going over 10 of those sucky cliffhanger endings in video games that pissed off everybody. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this video, so here is your official spoiler alert. Keep that in mind going forward. Drop a like, let me know one game that pissed you off to no end in the comment section, and let's get into it. Kicking off our list at number 10 is an excellent RPG from Nintendo in the form of Mother 3. Now, Mother 3 follows a group of kids that are trying to stop an alien invasion, and it garnered praise from critics and gamers alike due to its excellent writing and gameplay, but unfortunately, it is often forgotten due to only being released in Japan back in 2006. But the game definitely doesn't end on a very heartwarming note. The end of Mother 3 not only has one of your characters sacrificing themselves so the main character can finish the job you set out to do, but it turns out, when you actually do the job, it doesn't go as planned, and instead it kicks you off a series of events that cause the world to end, and then the screen goes black. Talk about closure, right? Pretty dark for a Nintendo game, but also pretty frustrating for the players. You're not really given any explanation as to why things went so horribly wrong, despite your best efforts. At number 9, we have arguably one of the best comic book games ever made, The Punisher. Now, The Punisher is a 2004 third-person action shooter with brutal violence and tons of fun Marvel character cameos. You play it, of course, as Frank Castle, as you hunt down various criminals in a story that loosely follows the 2004 Punisher movie, as well as volumes 4 and 5 of the Punisher comics. The game ends with a very dramatic post-credit scene where the fan-favorite villain Kingpin is looking over the dead body of Bullseye, and he starts plotting his epic revenge against Frank Castle. Unfortunately, the revenge never actually happened, because the planned sequel, well, it was canceled during development, which is a shame, because according to the developers, it was going to feature appearances from Daredevil and Deadpool. How awesome would it have been if we got a modern M-rated Punisher game with a company like Rocksteady or Arcane Studios? At number 8, all things considered, Gears of War 4 was a pretty solid game, and while it didn't really add anything super amazing to the universe, it definitely brought the story to an interesting new place, and fans are super eager to see where Gears 5 goes. However, one thing that Gears 4 did do was piss its fans off with the ending. At the very end of the game, after a climactic boss battle, it is revealed that Kate, one of your party members, is the granddaughter of Mira, the Locust Queen from the original Gears trilogy, and apparently she didn't know it. So this raised many questions like, well, if that's her grandmother, who's her grandfather? If Mira hated humans so much, why did she have children? And most importantly, how the heck did Kate not already know this? Gears 5 had better come out soon, and it better tie up all these loose ends that it gave us as a cliffhanger in Gears 4. It better happen, Epic Games. At number 7, we have God of War 2. As much as I love the old God of War games, I cannot deny the fact that the second one, it had a bad ending. God of War is all about helping Kratos get his revenge on the gods of Olympus, and at the end of God of War 2, you finally get to take that crack at Zeus, or at least it seems that way. Right before you get to kill Zeus, Athena jumps in and sacrifices herself to save him and reveals that you are actually Zeus's son. What? Seriously? There's this bunch of weird time travel stuff that happens super quickly, and it isn't very well explained, and the game ends on this massive cliffhanger for God of War 3 to wrap up a few years later. Part of the reason why this ending is so bad is due to how well paced the rest of the game was. God of War 2 has great pacing, but for whatever reason, the last 30 minutes are a total mess, almost as if the game was supposed to end with you killing Zeus and finishing the story, but then Sony stepped in, decided the last minute, hey, we need a conclusion to this trilogy, we need a third game, so we rewrote it. At number 6, Modern Warfare 2. This excellent game ended up being one of the most successful video games ever made with its explosive multiplayer mode and great single-player campaign. But one thing people tend to forget about Modern Warfare 2's campaign is the ending. It sucks. After the very satisfying conclusion to General Shepard's betrayal, we get word that the main villain, Makarov, is launching a massive terrorist attack on the world, and the planet is basically crumbling around you. So what happens then? Well, nothing. The game ends. Due to how great the final fight with Shepard was, a lot of people forget that the actual ending to Modern Warfare 2 is actually pretty lame, and thankfully, we got the story finished a couple years later in Modern Warfare 3. Cracking into the top 5, and we have a game that didn't exactly have the best reception from gamers when it came out due to all the controversy surrounding the microtransactions and EA's statements concerning them. But one way that EA could have won some people back on their side was having a great single-player campaign. I'm talking about Star Wars Battlefront 2. Unfortunately, the Battlefront 2 campaign isn't that good. And just to add insult to injury, it ends on one of the worst cliffhangers in gaming history. This game just kind of ends out of nowhere with no real tie-ups of any loose ends. It wasn't enough that EA was pushing a completely RNG-based multiplayer experience to milk people out of their money, and it wasn't enough on top of that their marketing completely misrepresented what the single-player campaign was about. But on top of all that, the cherry on top of it, they couldn't even bother to give us a decent ending to the story that they were selling. I mean, seriously, come on. Speaking of Star Wars games, at number 4, Star Wars Republic Commando. Let's talk about this one. It's infinitely better than Battlefront 2. It was a squad-based tactical FPS released all the way back in 2005 that featured an explosive multiplayer and an excellent single-player campaign that told the story of 4 elite clone troopers during the beginning of the Clone Wars. Throughout the game, you really get to know your squad mates, and Republic Commando was the first piece of Star Wars media to really give the clone troopers some character and make us genuinely care about them. But unfortunately, the side effect of that writing being so good was the fact that the ending made us mad. Republic Commando ends with one of your squad mates going missing after a mission, and your commander's pulling back to base and leaving him behind. Now, you would think that this would build up to an epic rescue mission, right? You're geared up, you're ready. The game just ends right there. Republic Commando was supposed to get a sequel, but guess what? It was canceled in development, so we're never actually going to get a conclusion to this story, which it's a shame because it was really, really good. At number 3, Resident Evil Gaiden. This is a game that most of you probably never played or even heard of, but it's at the number 3 spot today because of how hard it messed with the Resident Evil canon. As you probably know, Capcom kind of has a bad reputation when it comes to keeping the characters and storylines in Resident Evil consistent, resulting in a ton of weird plot holes and leaps in logic. But the ending of Resident Evil Gaiden is perhaps the worst of them all. It was released for the Game Boy Color in 2001, and it stars fan-favorite character Leon Kennedy as one of the main heroes as he and Barry track down a shape-shifting monster. But at the very end of the game, Barry and Leon are reunited, and Leon has a cut that's bleeding green blood, which means that he was killed and the shapeshifter took his place. That's right. This Resident Evil game from 2001 actually killed Leon and replaced him with a shape-shifting monster, but according to the official canon, the Leon we see in RE4 and 6 is the real Leon. So there's this massive chunk of the story missing. How did Leon come back to life? What happened to the monster? Is the RE4 Leon really a monster? Capcom is probably hoping that nobody actually remembers this game because of just how hard it screwed up the Resident Evil canon. At number 2, Halo 2. Now, this is widely considered to be one of the best Xbox games ever made, and it's also pretty much single-handedly launched the Xbox Live back in the day. But one thing that people like to overlook when talking about Halo 2 is its campaign, because it had some flaws, some big ones. For those who don't know, Halo 2 had a lot of trouble during development, resulting in a lot of corners being cut in order to get the campaign done on time. This meant not only were there some questionable decisions made with the enemy AI and spawn systems, but the game itself had a massive cliffhanger that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Master Chief boards an enemy cruiser. The commander asks him what he's doing. He replies with, "Sir, I'm finishing the fight." And then the game ends. We had to wait 3 years for this cliffhanger to be resolved, but at least we actually got an ending to the story, unlike this next game. You probably already knew what was going to be at number 1 today, Half-Life 2, Episode 2. It was released in 2007. It's the final piece of the Half-Life franchise, although it wasn't supposed to be that way. This game ends with perhaps the worst cliffhanger in history, and the frustration you feel just gets amplified when you remember the fact it's been 11 years, and Valve still hasn't given us a straight answer on whether or not Half-Life 3 is actually coming. But I think we all know by this point it was canceled. They just don't want to admit it. Half-Life 2 Episode 2 ends with one of the main characters being killed, you being surrounded by enemies, and then the screen fades black. That was it, and we've been waiting ever since. And I'm going to give an honorable mention really quick to Call of Duty Ghost 2, or Call of Duty Ghost. No, not Call of Duty Ghost 2. Call of Duty Ghost. The cliffhanger at the end of that campaign, which was an excellent campaign, just sucks because we're probably never going to get Ghost 2, and we're probably never going to see what happens. And there you have it, my friends. Those are 10 pissed off moments by gamers because of cliffhangers in video games. You guys let me know where they got you. Drop a like, make sure you're subscribed, turn on those notifications so you don't get any cliffhangers from YouTube putting my videos in your sub box, and I will see you guys soon.